we have an economy that's based on using the sustenance of children now and children that are going to be born in the future, to feed the present population, especially the present ruling class. Basically, this is the system of slavery that's been at the heart of all government institutions and economic systems since the beginning.
Ladies and gentlemen, beloved of America!
I think at this point, anything that they thought they had under their control is long gone. I think at this point it has spiraled out of control, and that the future is wide open. So
not as scary as the last time we talked, but still pretty scary.
Well, look, hey, scary is relative, isn't it? Scary is relative.
That's true.
Because a lot of things have happened since the last time we talked that were scary at the time to think about, and now they've happened, and we're used to it. This is something, like I said, it's bigger than they are. They can't control it. These are primal forces of nature, and these are hidden patterns of reality that play themselves out in history.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, Banal of America Audio, with your host, Tim Banal.
What is going on, my friends? This is Tim Banal of banalofamerica.com with another edition of BOA Audio Season 6. Before we dive into this week's program, first, please allow me to tip my cap and thank the man who provided the theme music for this week's program. His name is Pete Diggins, and his website is www.aurophonic.com. And you spell that AUROPHONIC.com. Big thanks to you, Pete, for the awesome theme music. We'll be using it here on the program for the next few weeks and months, much like we did with our buddy Ian's tune. And for all those musicians out there who are listening to the program and who may want to contribute a song to a future series of BOA Audio episodes, you can do that by simply writing to boaaudio@hotmail.com. Now, let's get down to business on this week's installment of BOA Audio. It is the long-awaited return to the program of razor-sharp esoteric researcher Tracy Twyman, and this time around she's going to be talking about her new book, Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge, which examines the connection between alchemy and economics. Truly some mind-bending stuff here, and it is quite a lengthy conversation. It goes over 2 hours and covers a whole bunch of different stuff. Some of the big tent poles we're going to be covering are not just this alchemical economic connection, but also the current state of the economic crisis and what's going on in the economy today and where things may be headed. In the discussion on alchonomics, as Tracy calls it, we'll find out how alchemical ideas seem to form the basis for key elements of our current economic system. We'll learn about concepts like the Golden Age of Saturn, the Lord of the Earth, and specifically how child sacrifice plays a key role in both ancient alchemy and our current world. Along the way, of course, we're going to journey down some side roads that include the technology of ancient civilizations, the potential for human organs to be used as economic instruments, 2012, and, as always, tons and tons more. Much like when other guests make their BOA Audio return, this episode goes from interview to conversation to jam session over the course of these 2+ hours. So strap yourself in and get ready for a fascinating and wild ride. Altogether, really, it is a mind-bending edition of the program that strives to glimpse at the true underpinnings that influence our world with one of the sharpest minds in esoterica today, Tracy Twyman. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Tracy Twyman, allow me to provide you with a little background on her. Tracy Twyman has been writing about alternative history and the occult for 14 years. She's the author of The Merovingian Mythos, Solomon's Treasure, and Mind Control, Sex Slaves, and the CIA. She's also the former editor of Dagoberd's Revenge magazine, a journal of esoteric history that was published from 1996 to 2003. Her latest book is Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge, And you can find out more about her at www.tracyrtwyman.com, TracyRtwyman.com, and there you can find out more about her books and read a whole bunch of articles by Tracy Twyman dealing with the emerging police state, the current financial crisis, and a whole bunch of other cool alconomical topics. And with all that said, let's get down to business, my friends, and rock and roll. This interview was recorded on March 20th, 2011. Tracy Twyman talking about the connection between alchemy and the economy on BOA Audio Season 6. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of BOA Audio Season 6. Really excited to be bringing back our guest this week, Tracy Twyman. She was on the program back in Season 4, and, we talk about a lot of weird stuff on here on this program. We talk a lot about some scary stuff, but she talks about some insanely scary material that is real scary stuff, because it's really what's going on in the world right now with the economy and really the roots of all these problems we're dealing with. And in a lot of ways, as I said, that stuff is a lot scarier than aliens and Bigfoot and stuff like that. So I enjoyed it quite a bit when we talked the first time around. I know a lot of the listeners did as well, because they've been clamoring for her return to the program, which is what we're doing here this week on the show. She has just put out a new book. It's in ebook form, and I think she may be sort of reissuing it as an expanded edition. We'll find out about that in a moment. It's called Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge, and it is some compelling stuff. It is really thought-provoking and really eye-opening to me. So I'm excited to explore some of the concepts that she puts forward in the book. And really, having read this and having read a lot of her previous stuff, I got to say, folks, she is one of the sharpest cookies in the esoteric field, genre for genre, let's say. She is just so well-versed in so many really finer details and arcane details with regards to a whole bunch of stuff that it amazes me. And as I was saying to her before we started the show here, I'd have to read this book 5 or 6 times before I could be as quick as she is with these details and this information. So I'm going to do my best to keep up with her, and I'm going to make her slow down for all of us. Don't worry, guys. Anyway, I could ramble all day because I'm very excited to have her on the show. Tracy Twyman, welcome back to BOA Audio. Let's dig on in.
Oh, thank you so much, Tim. It's nice to be on again.
I guess, we had you on a couple of years ago. Let's just sort of do a catch-up. What have you been up to in the last couple of years, aside obviously from the new book here? What's been going on with Tracy Twyman since, 2009?
Well, really, I've been immersing myself in research, and, the last time we talked, I had just really started re-immersing myself in economics, because at that time we were right in the throes of the crash of 2008. Mm-hmm. And I had written a book previously to that discussion called Solomon's Treasure, where I was examining what I called alchemical nature of our economy, which utilizes fiat currency, which is money created out of nothing by banks with the sanction of government. And at that time we were talking about comparisons between that process of creating money out of nothing and alchemy, and we talked about symbols on the dollar bill that sort of point to alchemical concepts, and the dollar sign itself, and so anyway, yeah, we were talking about what was going on back then. I had decided that I was going to re-explore the concept of economic alchemy, or as I call it, alconomics.
I like that. Nice.
And, so over the last couple of years since we last talked, I've been, following current events, which is, of course, overwhelming. Everything we talked about in 2008 has just, gotten worse. We were describing the situation then of what seemed like impending hyperinflation, currency collapse, and, of course, just collapse of financial systems in general, potential debt defaults by governments. Mm-hmm. And at that time, I think the audience may have felt like it was a bit alarmist. We were, of course, in the throes of a big financial collapse, but all the authorities were telling us that, if you just bail out the banks in a couple months, everything's going to be fine. And I think we were predicting several years of turmoil and doom. And, I was talking about like I said, the possibility of governments literally defaulting on their debt and, what might be the fallout of that. And that's all been happening.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, we're sort of like, picking up where we had left off almost a couple of years ago. We're still here, though. We're still standing, Tracy. You and I are still, we're not like destitute or on the streets, as far as I know. So I know I'm not, and you're doing all right. So, I mean, is the worst?
No, I'm not doing all right, and I don't know if you are.
No, I'm not doing great, but I mean, I'm hanging in there.
Well, okay, yeah, we're still breathing. It's not like, I guess Ireland or Iceland. These are governments that have defaulted, and well, there's a difference between Ireland and Iceland. Iceland decided not to repay the banks the full amount that they were demanding, or it's not even repay. They were demanding basically to be completely bailed out of the consequences of their own actions, their own, bad investments. And Iceland said no, and, they went through a period of difficulty getting cheap imports and things like that because their currency was weak. Their bonds weren't considered high rate for a while, but they bounced back pretty quickly. They're getting better. Ireland, Greece, and some of these other countries have accepted austerity measure requirements from the IMF. The IMF is this international, like just like the Federal Reserve, really. It's kind of it's the international agency, I guess, appointed mainly by Anglo-American bankers in the beginning, creating this thing, and it attempts to control all of the different currencies around the world that participate in this international currency system, of which the dollar is supposed to be the reserve currency, although that's starting to change. And at any rate, when countries start to have problems with with the value of their currency, they have problems paying their bondholders for their treasury debt. The IMF will come in and tell them how they need to change things in order to, get their fiscal house in order.
Yeah.
And they're literally, they boss them around. They act like they own the place. And they tell them, you have to, usually this is what they do with austerity measures. They come in and they say, you have to lower public expenditures. And in Europe, so much of the domestic economy is based on that. So many people work for the government or are receiving benefits from the government and dependent on them.
Yeah.
Well, the IMF will come in and tell them, you have to immediately lower that considerably and raise taxes on everyone. And so that's why, all of a sudden the rug gets pulled out from under you if you're in Greece or Ireland. And that's why they're rioting in the streets, or have been. And, that's why they are facing a very difficult future if they don't, overthrow their governments, do something to it's literally happening, as we
That's
speak
true.
right now.
That's true. Yeah. Well, I mean, is it going to get worse for us? I mean, I feel for the Irish and the Greek people and all that, but what about us, Americans? Is the worst yet to come still?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The collapse of the dollar, or it's going to what's happening is it's being relegated to just another currency as opposed to being the
standard,
the make believe gold that is at the heart of the whole international alchemical system. The dollar was made to function as good as gold. In other words, originally there was this Bretton Woods agreement. It was an international currency agreement between the central banks of all these different countries that they would use the dollar as their reserve currency. And what that means is that they would hold it in their own central banks as backing for their own currencies, as if it was gold. That's the role that gold used to play in the global economy prior to World War II. And after the World War II, they made this agreement that they would pretend that the dollar, which is printed out of nothing by the government, by the United States government, or by the Federal Reserve, which isn't really the government. At any rate, this thing that's printed out of nothing, that's alchemically created through magic, is taking the place of gold in the international currency.
Mm-hmm.
And so when they need to redeem those when they want to turn it into something that's valuable to them, we used to have an agreement that they could redeem those dollars for gold. And at a certain point in the 70s, Nixon decided to change that. We were running out of gold. Everyone was turning in their dollars for gold because their dollars were starting to become worthless. We were having an expansion of major inflation at that point. And that's when Nixon decided he was just going to tell everyone that, no, you can't redeem your dollars for gold anymore. Now dollars they have no relationship to gold, technically. They're free floating. So at any rate, I'm just describing how, dollars have been the artificial gold of the system for a long time. And it's getting to the point now where a lot of countries don't want to have that sort of burden to deal with. Because what's really happening is, in order to maintain the dollar's status, and it has to maintain a certain value, within the international markets, they have to tweak all these other indices in order to maintain that. And the government and the Federal Reserve and some banks, including J.P. Morgan and Goldman Sachs, are involved in tweaking all of these indices behind the scenes to try to maintain the value of the dollar. And there's so much relationship really between that and current events. It just so happens that so many times when there's a military invasion or some important thing that happens in the news, it turns out that it just so happens to work to the advantage of the United States and the value of the U.S. dollar. And it'd be kind of laborious to go through them all, but it's easy to. You can talk about 9/11 and the invasion of Iraq, and the maintaining the value of oil is very important. Or the relationship, the price relationship between oil and dollars. There's sort of an implied backing there. That's why they're called petrodollars. That's the value of that's the value in dollars of the oil that's being held by these oil-producing countries. And when oil goes high, when it costs a lot of dollars to buy oil, then that's when you can say that the value of the dollar is really starting to decline. So back when we were talking in 2008, we were in this period where gas, I guess it had finally started to go down a little bit, but we had just gone through this summer of just insane gas prices. And I'm sure you remember sort of the ripple effect that happened there, where everything then was affected because the price of fuel is really the basis of everything else. You have to, in order to get goods around the world, you have to be able to fuel the people. Yeah,
transport them and everything else, yeah.
So, that's, a lot of people worry about peak oil, and that's the issue there, is if oil gets too expensive to take out of the ground and refine, then, everything else starts to break down. It's like no longer economically worth it to, bring goods, say, for instance, on a truck all the way across a continent, or to even, in some cases, fly them or ship them on a boat across oceans. I mean, right now our economy is so based on international commerce, and if you think about it, there's just some amazing things going on right now. Like sometimes if you go to the supermarket, you'll buy some apples, right? Those apples may have been grown, in the United States, or they may have been grown in Mexico or something, but then they'll be shipped to China where they get waxed by, Chinese corporate slaves working for pennies a day. And then they ship them all the way back here to sell them to us. And if you think about how much an apple is, not very much money usually, and how it was somehow profitable to someone to go through all of that, and how much fuel was spent doing that. And that's happening everywhere. Like if you buy a product, so many times there'll be, the item itself was made in China, and then it might be brought here or somewhere else to go do something else to the item, and then they might ship it back to China to package it, and then they finally ship it to Mexico, where it's put on a truck and driven by a Mexican truck driver up the NAFTA superhighway and to deliver to American Walmarts. And, somehow that's profitable. The reason why it's profitable is really because of the relationship that the U.S. dollar has to all these other currencies, it's the whole global supply chain and international currency markets are being manipulated to make this happen. So the goal of the Bretton Woods Agreement, and the creation of the World Trade Organization, all that happened at the same time. They said that the goal was to create the most efficient global supply chain that you could have. You know, they have like this mathematical formula that they're trying to meet, where everything can be produced and sold and distributed in the most efficient way. And, you know, that includes trying to get the price of human labor down as much as possible relative to the dollar. So that's why, you know, it's complicated, but when you look at the history of all of these international economic policy decisions that have been made since the 40s, you can see that they've deliberately or engineered it the way it is now, and the way it is now is so dependent on being able to ship these goods all over the world with very little cost. And, you know, if you can't do that, then, well, you know, it's not like the world's going to end. It's just that it has to change, adjust to that. You know, you got to have more domestic production and stuff like that.
Oh, Tracy, you're always scaring me on here with these dark outlook on the... Why can't they just grow the apples in America and sell them? Who needs them waxed?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Well, you know, maybe
well, I don't even
wax, but you know,
why can't they? Why can't we wax them? Oh man, we're gonna have to eventually. Is that kind of what's gonna happen? It's gonna end up like, you know, we're just gonna stop being able to ship things all over the place and just start making them here because it's cheaper to make it here.
Well, here's one thing that I think has changed since the last time we talked. Okay. I was very pessimistic in general last time we talked, as in, you know, the fix is in. You know, there's no way out of just descending into economic slavery, descending into everyone, you know, everyone's currency collapsing, everyone living in a depression, and everyone being indebted to banks and governments to the point where they're just miserable debt slaves. And that's still, you know, a potential future, very, very much a potential future.
Okay.
But what's happening now is that, you know, people are becoming aware of what's happening around them. Also, more people with money, with wealth, people in positions of power are waking up to it as well, and, you know, not necessarily wanting to go along with it. And whereas I would say that in 2008 we were dealing with what it was someone's idea of a managed collapse. I think that, you know, it was all part of a process to try to wean us into a different international currency system, one with a real international currency produced by the IMF, the SDR as they call it, not the dollar. And so I really think that, you know, and not to sound too conspiratorial, but, you know, these things can be very easily controlled from the top by central banks colluding with governments. Well, banks colluding with governments through central banks, I guess you would say.
Yeah.
But it's like, I really think that, you know, this thing has been engineered, not every single step of the way, but in a broad sense, since the 40s, and to try to bring the whole world into an international currency system with the dollar, and then wean them off the dollar and, you know, remake it yet again.
Into a unified, like a one world dollar.
Yeah, yeah. And, you know, yeah, I think that the people who were doing that, you know, I'm sure they had some sort of ideology where they can justify it as they think that they're helping everyone. The justification of Bretton Woods and everything, all the international agreements that happened at that time were that they were going to prevent another world war from happening, that if you can make everyone economically mutually interdependent, that means that any sort of war or even trade war that you allow to break out would be mutually destructive, which is why, even though, you know, there is sort of a trade war happening between the U.S. and China, neither one of them wants the other to collapse fully because, you know, China owns a whole bunch of our bonds. They don't want them to become worthless. And, you know, we want them to keep buying our bonds, so we want them to have a healthy economy. And that was the goal of, that was the so-called good reason behind Bretton Woods. And, you know, but at the same time, what it really is people who are already in positions of power and have lots of money trying to use that money and power to consolidate their wealth and make it easier to manage and get more of it. And so, those are the people, those are the elite moneyed families that, just like the conspiracy theorists say, they've been behind everything for some time now, behind the manipulation of currencies and governments.
Well.
And now, anyway, at that time, I thought that we were in a collapse that was being caused and managed. Well, I think at this point, anything that they thought they had under their control is long gone. I think at this point it has spiraled out of control, and that the future is wide open. In other words, we are seeing social revolutions happen right now, and who knows what's going to come of that. But it could be entirely different from the world order that we had before.
All right. We need like a world revolution against this economic system, which is sort of to dig into the book here, Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge. You introduced some sort of big ideas here to what we're seeing going on in the world, I guess is the best way to put it. And that's not even very well put. But you introduced some interesting ideas that I never really considered or had thought of. You sort of like do a really good job of stepping outside of the workaday bubble to explain how the very economy by which, we all participate is, as you like to say, sort of alchemical, has alchemical roots to it, has a lot of strange alchemy going on. And what I thought was really, well, I guess before we sort of dig into the big meat of the book, why don't you sort of summarize, I guess you could say, the main idea behind Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge?
Okay, well, I am taking my study of alchenomics, the alchemical nature of the fiat currency economy, and actually the alchemical nature of just the history of money in general, taking it to another level and exploring specifically the alchemical process itself, the steps in that process, and how they are in some ways analogous to the things that are happening in the global economy. I'm making metaphors, but in alchemy, it really utilizes a lot of metaphors, harkening back to different ancient mythologies. In the Bible and in Greek mythology, they draw a lot from that. And these alchemical manuscripts, the source of the whole body of knowledge of alchemy, written in medieval times and early Renaissance times, they're written in really dense code, and I would say that I don't trust anyone who claims that they've decoded them or any one of them. I think that they're written in such code that almost no one has decoded them, and if they have, they haven't published it.
Yeah. But
I had my own crack at it with this recent study I did for the book, and what I found was that they seem to be talking about. Okay, there's these two things. There's mercury and there's lead in the process of alchemy, they say. And these are they say that they're not just the regular metals. It's a metaphor for something deeper. Yes, it is the metal, but it has another layer or several other layers of meaning to it.
Yeah.
The original alchemists were, that's the origin of chemistry. That's the origin of metallurgy. It came out of these mystically minded people doing metaphysical studies with the properties of metals and other chemicals. And so at the time that they were doing this, anything having to do with science and the transformation of substances from one to the other and the different properties of them was considered mystical, and they were sort of thought of as, almost kind of like witches. I mean, there weren't as many persecutions of alchemists, I would say, as there were of witches, but they were sort of thought of by the community as, people dabbling in a dangerous subject. And you really can compare alchemy to ritual magic. I would say that it's pretty much the same thing. Hermeticism is the study of alchemy. Hermes is, the patron saint of alchemy. And Hermes, that's the Greek name for this god. The Roman name is Mercury. And the substance mercury is named after him and thought of in the alchemical process as being analogous. These things are connected. The metal mercury is the god Mercury, and it is also this really difficult to explain abstract concept of the principle that changes one thing into another.
Yeah, like a changing agent.
Right. It's the alchemists thought of themselves as learning the secrets of God's creation. And, they believed that God brought something out of nothing, created the universe, and transformed the primal chaos of the universe into the different things that we see today. And that he used this universal agent, this God force, as the power in order to do that. The transformative power. And the alchemists were basically saying that the mercury is that. The mercury extracts the gold from the lead. The lead is thought of as analogous to the primal materia, the primal chaos. And so they use this metaphor of the mercury as this child being swallowed and then reborn. And specifically one of the alchemists, Nicholas Flamel, he wrote a treatise about alchemy, and there's these 7 images inside of it that have always fascinated people who study alchemy. They've never really understood what they mean. People are always trying to figure it out. But one of the images in there is of Saturn cutting off the feet of Mercury. And then it talks, and then there's another image, actually, not in the book necessarily, but on Nicholas Flamel's property, of Herod ordering the slaying of the innocents, all the babies that were killed when Christ was born, because he was trying to eliminate Jesus. There was a prophecy that Jesus was going to grow up to be the Messiah and overthrow him. Well, Nicholas Flamel says that story is really harkening back to the story of Saturn, or Kronos, and his children. So the story of Kronos is that he had overthrown his father, who had been the main god in the world at that time, Uranus, and then he did so by castrating him, and then he imprisoned him in the center of the earth, and then Kronos became the lord of the earth, and he ruled over this golden age, where supposedly the earth was in this paradisal realm. There was no time. There was no bad weather. Nobody had to work for a living. And he was thought of as the Lord of Misrule. In other words, he was the king, but he wasn't telling people what to do. There was no need for that.
Right. There's no laws or anything like that.
Right. Everything was perfect. But the bad thing that Kronos was guilty of was killing all of his children, because he thought that there was a prophecy that he was going to be overthrown by one of his sons, just as he had overthrown his own father. And so, you can see the analogy here to the story of Herod, and the massacre of the innocents. So the way that Kronos killed his children was by swallowing them. As soon as his wife Rhea would give birth to a child, he would have her deliver it to him, and then he would eat it. And in the Greek myth, these divine children were still alive in some sort of dreamlike state inside of his stomach. And Rhea, his wife, at one point she just got sick of having all of her children killed. She decided one of them she was going to save, so she saved Zeus and brought him to the island of Crete surreptitiously. Instead of giving Zeus to her husband to swallow, she gave him a stone. And then Zeus grew up on Crete. He was raised by a goat, and when he grew up, he slaughtered the goat and he turned its hide into his shield, the magical aegis. Anyway, that's one of the things that Zeus has always seen with his magic aegis shield. And so Zeus then grew up and did exactly what was prophesied. He became the cupbearer to his father's throne. Surreptitiously, his dad didn't know who he was, and then he gave him something to drink, and it had some poison in it, and that caused Kronos to vomit out all of his children. and those were the Olympian gods. They came out of his stomach. So did the stone, and the stone became the Omphalos stone that they worshipped at the Oracle of Delphi. But at any rate, so the Olympian gods came out of the stomach of Kronos, and then Zeus and the other Olympian gods fought against Kronos and his kingdom and overtook it. And so now supposedly we're living still in the realm of Zeus. And Zeus is analogous to the God of the Bible. He's similar to Jehovah. So
let me jump in here, Tracy, and sort of rein it in a little bit and sort of I'll sort of set you up a little bit more here on this. I think the point you're trying to make in the book is that there's this tradition of child sacrifice that dates back to the ancient times that was then sort of co-opted and interpreted on their own by the alchemists. And the end result really is that this machine, this economic machine that we're all a part of, is at the very core using child sacrifice in a metaphorical sense to power the whole machine.
Yeah. The alchemists were saying that, in alchemy, the lead, the Saturn, is eating his children, the metals, and then digesting them, because the Athenor of the alchemist was thought of as a stomach. And then, they literally said that. And then, then what would come out of the Athenor is the gold, or whatever the end result is of the transformation. And you can carry this analogy forward to the economy. I was saying that, we have an economy that's based on using the sustenance of children now and children that are going to be born in the future, to feed the present population, especially the present ruling class. And in the book, I go through a whole bunch of different stories, not only ancient myths, but also more recent folk legends and things like that, where it's the same pattern of the king forces his subjects to kill their children and turn them into gold, and then give the gold to him. And I basically analyze culture in general, the myths of several different cultures throughout history, and the economy, and said, look, this child sacrifice is really the main central mystery, the main rite at the heart of the ritual of statecraft. And in the economy, I'll explain what I mean by that. It's based on the sustenance of the future, the children of the future. Here's how it goes. The government is creating this money out of nothing, and in order to back it, they're selling bonds to the public, or to other central banks, other private banks. They're just selling bonds, right? Yeah. And so someone is holding this thing that has alleged value. Well, where does the value come from? It comes from the government's right to tax its citizens. So when the government is selling bonds to create money, they are selling to the bondholder their ownership of you, your present and future labor, and your wealth, and everything that you will possess and produce throughout your life. But because governments love to work mainly in deficit, they always borrow more than they can pay back. They always need to spend more than they have with tax revenue. So what they end up doing really is putting on the hook not only you in your present life for tax expenditures, but also your children and their children. And we're at the point now where, every family owes allegedly $50,000 or more of the debt. The figure changes depending on which report you're looking at. But and there's no way that Social Security could possibly last for another generation. In fact, Social Security is another example of this. Social Security, the average person who's using it now and who has used it in the past, is getting approximately 8 times the value that they put into it. And that's a value that's not dollars, that's adjusted for inflation.
Oh, wow.
So that means that they're, using the Saturn analogy, every geezer on Social Security and Medicare is getting, he's swallowing like 8 of his children in order to get that, Those are kids that will have to work their whole lives, presumably, and get taxed at an enormous rate. And their money will have so little value because of the inflation that's been created, that, they're just going to be miserable slaves, and there's no way that they're going to be able to get any of these Social Security benefits or health care or anything like that. And, that's what our current economy is based on. It's very easy to see the analogy in the present economy. It's more arcane, actually, when you look at older economic systems, but it's there. Trust me. This is basically this is the system of slavery that's been at the heart of all government institutions and economic systems since the beginning. And I guess one of the reasons why I went into such detail about the Golden Age and the life of Saturn is because I think it's a really interesting concept. The Golden Age was really, it's like the Garden of Eden, really seems to be this timeless realm. This is before time began, mythologically.
Yeah.
And the reason really why Kronos had to swallow his children back then was because that would have initiated the process of time. If you have birth, you have to have death. And Kronos ruled in paradise so long as there was no actual time. I mean, they even said that in the Golden Age, the year was 360 days long, and the orbit of the Earth was a perfect circle. The axis was not tilted, and therefore there were no seasons. Everything was the same all year round. And as long as you lived in this like third of the planet around the equator, you were in this perfect paradise realm. And so, even though it's so hard to imagine timelessness, but that's what these mythographers seem to have been trying to communicate.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, it's just this really, I think, really interesting way of looking at things. And I've been doing way more research on the Golden Age even since the printing of my newest book, Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge. And I'm more and more convinced that this is really an understood, not understood concept in mythology, and also in hermetics, in religious rituals today that people don't understand. And I do think that there's this belief amongst secret societies nowadays that we are going back into a new golden age, because that's part of the whole prophecy, is that that there's these 4 epochs of man. The Golden Age was the first, and then there were these others that all named after metals, mind you. And they actually said that the human beings of those periods were made out of these different metals. So, like in the Golden Age, there were actually golden people, and now we're in the Iron Age, supposedly. Don't get confused about the archaeological terms of, Iron Age and Bronze Age.
Yeah,
and all that.
yeah.
It's not the same. But at any rate, so they say we're going through these different eons of time, and that they repeat in a cycle. So, eventually, supposedly, we're going to have a new golden age again. But during the Iron Age, which is what we're in right now, society's breaking down. Everything's collapsing. Mankind is corrupt, and, every man for himself, everyone screwing each other over. And, it's hard to say that that's not happening. But the prediction is that eventually that gives way, the child, of the present aeon dies and is reborn. Then we're in some new golden age in which, it's said that it's a realm of peaceful anarchy. Now, and it's strange to think of Saturn, this person eating, or God eating his own children, as being a good guy, but that's sort of the image, is that, well, he was the king of this wonderful time in history, or time of no time, I guess. And so the hat that he wore, the red Phrygian cap, as it's called, it's the same as Santa Claus's hat without the little ball at the end. And Santa Claus is absolutely based on Saturn. But Saturn, was thought of as this benevolent king, and the hat is associated with libertarianism. The Liberty Cap, which I named one of my websites after, libertycappress.com.
Yeah.
It's associated with revolution and equality and freedom. And so it's interesting to think that we may be coming into a new golden age, and that it's not something that the elites necessarily are controlling, although they may be trying to, but they couldn't. If it's a force of history that's more powerful than they are,
they may just be trying to keep it from happening.
Of what they try to do. So it's interesting to try to think of what may be coming next.
It's always interesting to think about what may be coming next. I think that's what drives a lot of us here in this odd little field that we're in. We take the time to stop and try and contemplate that. Speaking of time, I thought it was interesting. You really make some interesting points in the book about time and how it's sort of become commodified in the last 2 or 3 generations, if you will, on purpose. And I found that really interesting because a lot of people don't consider that. But you sort of make the point in the book that when you're working at a job or something like that, you're really selling your time to your employer. And it's that time equals money, as the expression goes, in a literal sense. So I guess talk about that sort of idea there, that the commodification of time.
Sure, yeah. I pointed out that without a gold standard, you have this implicit connection between time and money, where everyone's money, the value of their money, is measured by labor, by how many minimum wage man hours you can get out of that amount of money. But because, of course, the value of the dollar fluctuates, and it always, fluctuate is the wrong term. I mean, over the period of a month or more, it's always going to be going down. And that's what's been going on for decades now. So when that happens, when they inflate the currency by printing more dollars than there are presently goods and services to absorb it or back it up, then that waters down the value of those man hours. So what I pointed out is that does something to the psyche of the person doing the work, that as time goes on, it seems like time is going faster, that you have to work more and more in order to maintain a certain level of standard of living. So, I'm sure there's a certain point, I know I reached it, where you can't possibly do any more things in the day, and yet the money that you're getting isn't worth what you need to buy in order to live.
Right.
And so, I just talked about how that's sort of a mystical, alchemical concept. And here you have Saturn, or Kronos, being the father time figure. And in the alchemical metaphor, they talk about him cutting off the feet of Mercury. This is a state, something that happens in the alchemical process. Mercury is the metal is liquid at room temperature, but when you do certain things to it or change the temperature of it, then it will solidify. And so I think that's what they were talking about, was combining mercury and lead and whatever metals they happen to be using in whatever transformation you happen to be doing at the time. But the effect is that it solidifies the mercury. It cuts its feet off. It prevents Mercury from flying. With Mercury has wings on his hat, and he can normally fly, but if you fix his feet to the ground or cut them off, or in some of the pictures, Saturn is tying his feet up, then you're preventing him from being free, basically. And so, I was saying that's sort of an image of what's happened to modern man, the slavery that we now have, where we're indebted to the point where we have to sell all of the time that we have and then more. But that relationship of Saturn to Mercury, where Saturn's cutting off the feet of Mercury, is really an emblem of modern man living in a world where time equals money, but there isn't enough time to pay for everything.
Ain't that the truth?
And I think if we got time left, I'd like
We got plenty of time.
I'd like to say some things about Christmas.
Wow, okay. This comes out of nowhere. All right, what?
No, it's part of the, well, I talk about it in the book, how Christmas is this very important time in the economy, that, the economy operates in the red, really, for most of the year. And then on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving, that's when the whole Christmas shopping season kicks off, and that's when retailers expect to finally make their money back and make a profit.
Yeah.
And so much of our economy domestically is really dependent on this consumer purchasing, and so much of it happens during this period that when, if people did not participate in this festival, it wouldn't work at all.
Right.
And there's so many things going on there. You're working. Well, okay.
All right.
Huh?
No, it sounds like you're ready to unload here, so go for it.
No, there's so many different directions I could go in, but I think we have to start with the connection between Santa Claus and Kronos. I mean, Kronos is the basis of Santa Claus. In Rome, they called this festival Saturnalia, and they celebrated it on the last days of the year. Remember I said that during Saturn's kingdom in the Golden Age, there were 360 days.
Right.
And it's corresponding with the 360 degrees of the circle, and everything was perfect and wonderful. And then something happened, some sort of cataclysm happened that marked the transition from that age to the next. You can think of that as being analogous to Zeus overthrowing Kronos. That caused the axis to be tilted and the orbit to be changed, so it's 365 days and some change now instead of 360.
Right.
And so in the ancient world, not only in Rome, but in Egypt and several other, I'm pretty sure Babylon, they had this concept that the last 5 days of the year were non-days. They didn't actually exist because they remembered the older time, and they always thought of that as the sacred time period, that this is a fallen version of the old world, the old reality. And so during the last 5 days of the year, it would just be a festival. They would celebrate. And in Roman Saturnalia, this is the way they did it, was they would let all of the slaves free for a few days. And they would all put on that red liberty cap to signify that they were free. And everyone was allowed to drink and use prostitutes and gamble and all of these things that were considered uncouth and something you shouldn't do in public during the rest of the year. At any rate, so yeah, Saturnalia, anciently, historically, is this time period of celebration of the Golden Age. You try to recreate the Golden Age, and one of the things that would happen is they would have this temporary king elected. Here's how they elect them. They still do this at Mardi Gras, by the way. They have these things called king cakes, and you bake a cake with a little token inside representing a baby, and you cut up the cake, and whoever gets the slice with the baby hidden inside of it is the king for the Saturnalia festival, and he gets treated like the king throughout the entire time, and he's given gifts, and then he also distributes gifts to children, just like Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the end of the festival, he is sacrificed, or in some cases, he's the king from last year's Saturnalia, and then he finally gets sacrificed, and then they elect a new one. So that's where we get this. So many of our rituals from this Saturnalia festival. Why do you set out cookies for Santa Claus? It's a votive offering, basically, to Kronos to keep him from eating your children. Seriously, that's the origin of it.
Yeah.
And so anyway, Christmas, it's so weird to think of it, that it's this important period at the end of the year that our economy depends on people making ridiculous purchases, supposedly giving gifts to their children. Supposedly it's all about the children. But at the heart of it is this symbolism from the ancient world of child sacrifice, and not only that, but eating the children. So, it's very interesting to think about, I think.
Yeah, very interesting. So we've established that you hate Christmas.
No.
I was just joking,
I love
Tracy.
Christmas. It's really weird. It's so weird. I love it.
All right. Okay, so you love Christmas, even though it's based on child sacrifice. You can't win on this. No, I'm just teasing you, Tracy. What I find interesting is sort of what we've been talking about here, and is, talked about at length in the book, Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge, is that, we seem like this sophisticated society, and, we don't sacrifice children anymore, or, in most civilized parts of the world. But really, we're still sort of enacting a lot of these ritual aspects that have been going on since ancient times. It's very strange. And you wonder, I guess, who, clearly you've, unlocked this, if it's all, accurate, let's say. As you said, you do your own interpretations, obviously. But you wonder, if these families or whatever, if they're sort of, if they understand that all of this is ritual. Do you know what I mean?
Oh, I think that, yeah, the more elite families absolutely do. And then as far as everyone else goes, this is something, like I said, it's bigger than they are. They can't control it. These are primal forces of nature, and these are hidden patterns of reality that they play themselves out in history, but you don't really see the pattern until later,
Yeah.
I'm trying to describe the pattern as I see it going on right now. That's nothing compared to what it'll be like 10 years from now when we look back at this period in time and see, what was really going on. We can see so many more patterns, so many more metaphors to be made. But child sacrifice, that's the prime religious ritual of all. You think about it. That's what Jesus was all about. It was God demanding the sacrifice of his own son in the stead of us, of his other children, the humans. And that not only child sacrifice, but the concept of the substitution of that it's possible to sort of placate God by offering a substitute. That's so common, like Abraham was going to sacrifice Isaac to God, but then God accepted a goat sacrifice instead, or a ram. And then at the Passover, that's what is really going on there. You're sacrificing the ram instead of the firstborn sons of Israel. And if you just go back to the ancient world, that's what it's all about, is child sacrifice. And if you can't actually sacrifice your son, you do it to someone else's son, or in later times, then they started using animals, and now we use little cookies. You consume the flesh and blood of God, but it's only a metaphorical God hidden in a cookie.
Yeah, but as you also point out in the book, what we're also doing, I don't have any kids, thank God, but what other people are also doing is they're sacrificing their children to the machine, to the whole system now. You teach your kid to go to school and to work, and the value of the dollar and all that horse shit. And then really, it's a big con. It's a big system that's been set up.
The metaphor of the Matrix really applies here, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
If you just remember that movie, I mean, it's a cheesy movie, but it's got some really interesting concepts in it. And one of them is that if you're one of the victims, if you're one of the slaves, you're one of the batteries for the machine of the future, you're literally like floating in a vat of goo, being digested, but you're not aware of it because you're dreaming this alternate reality. But meanwhile, your body and the sustenance of your body is being utilized by this machine slave owner that you're not even aware of. And interestingly, in that movie, they said that the slaves, the people that were floating around in this goo, what did they eat? What was their sustenance? It was the liquefied remains of the other slaves. So it was cannibalistic as well.
Well, I also was thinking about this as I read the book too. This is sort of a chicken or an egg thing, maybe. And I don't know. You didn't really get into this in the book, so I don't know if this has crossed your mind yet or not. But We talk about the children and babies being used, in the alchemical practices and whatnot, and child sacrifice, and you wonder how this might lead somewhere towards stem cell research. And I wonder, if perhaps either it was that quest to sacrifice babies that led to that knowledge, or if it was lost knowledge originally that led to the misconception that power could be derived from babies.
I don't know. I've definitely thought of.
I stumped you this time. Nice.
No, you haven't stumped me, not necessarily. I didn't get into this much yet in this interview, but I did talk about how not only do I think that there's a metaphor there in alchemy, many layers of metaphor that can be applied to many different things, but I think that some of the alchemists in some of the time were actually using the remains of children, and I talked about how I thought definitely that Nicholas Flamel might have been doing that, he and his wife, because he and his wife did their alchemy together, and he always sort of he always said that, well, my wife's participation is really important. I couldn't have done it without her. And one of the interesting things about them is that when they got their first, I guess, load of riches made from gold, from surreptitiously creating gold through the alchemical process, they became wealthy, and then they needed to, launder that. I guess they needed to put it into things in order, for everyone to not wonder, hey, what's that pile of gold sitting over there? So at any rate, they and it's also sort of a spiritual concept that it's important to donate your wealth to good causes because that brings more wealth. That's another alchemical monetary concept that I've written about in other books. But at any rate, so one of the things he wanted to do was, he wanted to do some sort of good work. And so he created this cemetery by his house where babies that had died during birth or shortly thereafter could be buried, and also, children that had miscarried. So that he called it the Cemetery of the Innocents, and he put that image of Herod and the Massacre of the Innocents right on the outside of it. And it was right by his house. So I thought, this is probably not a coincidence. And if you think about it, isn't it quite likely that Flamel was using the remains of some of those children in some of his operations? And isn't it quite possible that his wife could have been producing some of this material as well? She could have had some pregnancies that were deliberately terminated early so that the material could be used. Right. And, at that time, that would have been one of the most horrible things you could do. Having an abortion, and especially deliberately doing it for such a purpose, would have been so diabolical,
Well, it's still pretty diabolical. It's certainly not something that's encouraged nowadays either.
Absolutely. No, I agree with you. I'm not in favor of abortion at all, and I won't get into that. But
no. I just mean, abortion for the sake of having the ingredients for some kind of weird magical ritual.
Yes, absolutely. It would be weird today, and absolutely the sort of thing that you would get stoned over back then. So, but in his writing, he acts like. He sort of hints at it, but then he says, but I wouldn't use the real blood of children in the operations because that would be diabolical. But then he later talks about basically having a guilty conscience. So I really got the idea that he was using the remains of children, and that he was doing these good works as a way of sort of making up for that. So then you think about modern times, and the use of stem cells and things like that. Of course, the only reason why that hasn't progressed further is because it's considered bad. There's a taboo. Right. And, if you think about it, if it wasn't for our moral standards that we presently have, most people have, some sort of Judeo-Christian moral standard, that would be happening so much more. In fact, I've theorized in the past about the use of human body parts as a economic basis. And my father actually, my father's name is Rich and Famous.
What's that?
And my father's name is Rich and Famous. That's his name. And
what does that mean?
That's actually, he changed his name. It's sort of a stage name, and that's what his legal name is now.
His name is Rich and Famous. Does he have a last name?
Rich,
it's just
Rich is the first name, Famous is the last name, and is the middle initial.
What does he do?
Well, I was getting to that.
Okay, yeah, you've intrigued me here. I've never heard of this before. Go ahead.
One of the things he has is sort of this website and Facebook page he's created. It's called BIBT, Because Your Body Belongs to You. And he keeps track of stories about organ donations and transplants, and specifically the market for organs, because it's illegal to sell your organs.
Yeah.
As, you're not allowed to make a individual decision to sell your organs either before or after you die. And but what is happening is that people donate their organs voluntarily, and then what happens is the hospital takes those organs, and there's these intermediary organizations that profit, or they're supposedly nonprofit, but people are working for these organizations, making their living at it, so. And of course, the person receiving the organ is paying. They're definitely paying tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars to get this organ. And so someone's making all this money, and it's going through the nonprofit organizations and the hospitals, and there's all these middlemen profiting from it. You, the person whose guts are being used, are not allowed to profit from it, and your family can't profit from it. Well, so my father's opinion is that that's wrong, and you should be allowed to. And I thought that was very interesting, because if you think about it, this could be the source of derivatives now and in the future. You can have investments based on this. Because my dad's idea is that you should be allowed to use your body as a resource. You should be able to find a company that wants to buy it and make a contract with them that, they can have your organs after you die. And of course, they'll probably assess your health and give you a rating of the value of your organs based on your lifestyle and everything. At any rate, so yeah, I was saying that not only could it'd be great for the people, for individuals, if this law was changed so that we all would have, on average, about $150,000 worth of organs in our body that we could borrow against. But if I've thought of it, probably someone else has too. So let's connect this to Obamacare. All right. No, seriously, the Obamacare is at heart. Really, it's all about taking the assumption that your body belongs to you. It's the last frontier. It's the one thing that the government hasn't claimed complete ownership of yet. Yeah. And they're going to take that as well. And if you think about it, what else does the United States government have to offer its bondholders anymore? Because they've already, as I think I explained maybe in our last conversation, they already hypothecated all of the land and other property to the bondholders, whoever the obligates are of our national debt. In 1933, Congress did that. And so it literally, ever since then, the land beneath your feet and everything that anyone thinks they own in the United States is actually owned by bankers. The government said so. But the only thing, and also, of course, the fruit of your labor, anything that you might do in your life to create wealth, it also already belongs to these bankers. The one thing that they don't own yet is your physical body. And if you think about it, we now are in a position where if we're going to restructure our debt, we will have to offer another collateral of some sort. And if we're going to reinflate the economy, we need to have another bubble, another commodity that you can base derivatives on. So I absolutely thought, that this was the direction they were going in. Now, obviously, it looks like Obamacare is dead in the water for now, but I still think that this is the final frontier of debt slavery.
Wow. Well, I hope it doesn't happen for a while, Tracy, because I smoke, I drink too much. My body's worthless. My body's absolutely worthless. I'm in better shape. I'm in better shape if we just stick with this dying dollar. Wow.
Yeah, no doubt.
Very interesting. That is very interesting. Wow. So you see this as something that may happen. I just would like to think that at some point the human race will figure out that this like economic system, that we can stop this before they institute the new bubble, that we wake up to this whole thing. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
I don't understand why, I just don't understand why we can't seem to get ourselves out of this mess. Do you know what I mean? I think people are just powerless and they just don't want to do anything about it, and they've been conditioned, dumbed down and pushed out of the whole, decision-making process about the world.
Yeah, for the most part, that's true, but you don't have to have everyone involved in a revolution. It's really just a fraction of the people that do that when you look through history, and of course that's what I think is going on. I think we are going from one era to another. People are waking up. There's going to be a revolution. One generation will supplant the previous one, and you can think of it as analogous to Zeus overthrowing Kronos or Kronos overthrowing Uranus. It's the way that one age passes to the next, and the oppressed youth, the slaves, overtake their masters. But what I talked about in Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge, I said that any system, just historically, it always has to have someone play the role of the sacrifice and the victim. So if a new age is going to come and some other concept is going to rule, even if it's not a literal elite or a new ruler, if it's the golden age, then it should be some sort of system of anarchy. Or if we have a ruler, then it should be an unruler. He should be the Lord of Misrule. He should be a ruler in name only. But even the Golden Age had its victim, its slave that they used as the source of their sustenance and as the sort of scapegoat upon which the sins of the ruling elite would sort of put the blame for everything. And, I don't think that's ever going to change. I'm sure that there will be a new scapegoat in the future.
Well, yeah. Well, that's kind of the concern I had, too, reading the book. How do we know that we've kind of established here that the system that's in place has been engineered by people? How do we know that they're just not trying to engineer their own golden age for themselves and where the put-upon slaves to produce their golden age?
Oh, we don't know that at all.
I mean, isn't that what actually is happening? Possibly?
Well, I think that's what they think, but, Kronos always thought that he was going to rule, and he didn't think, he thought of everything. He didn't realize that Rhea had tricked him. I think that's the way it is here, too. These people think they have everything under control, but always, historically, something slips out of their notice, and that's the thing that leads to their downfall and the creation of the next stage. But, Zeus was the son of Kronos, and that's likely to be the case here as well. If there's going to be a new form of leadership, then the leaders of that new government or whatever it is will come from the same bloodlines, most likely.
That doesn't sound good, though.
Well, I don't think there's like I said, there's something, we're talking about something that's bigger than us. I think that a lot of what people say is, conspiracy of elite families throughout generations. Sometimes it's just fate and destiny that, I think that these people literally have, they have curses and blessings from previous generations stored in their DNA. That's how it works. I don't think that they can stop being what they are.
Right. So it's not so much like, because people always talk about how, if there's this grand conspiracy, why would someone put all their life's work into something that they'll never even see the fruition of? People who are working towards a one-world government. If they were working on it in the 40s or something like that, they wouldn't even see it come to fruition. But what you're saying is sort of like that it's just sort of destiny. It's just sort of this pattern that's emerging.
Well, see, that's the concept of the Lord of the Earth in the center of the earth that I alluded to a little bit in Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge. If you go to my website, tracyrtwyman.com, you'll find a new article that gets into this much deeper. It's called Regnum in Potentia, Saturn's Kingdom Transformed into the Golden Age. And it's all about this concept of the Lord of the Earth. There were a lot of, like, Eastern cults that were into this idea, too, and the Nazis were into it. This is their idea of the black sun in the center of the earth. The swastika was actually a symbol of this black sun concept. They were saying that there's this God buried in the center of the earth who's really the Lord of the earth, even though you can't see him, and he's controlling everything in some mystical manner. He's actually asleep, and his dreams are controlling our reality. We're living within his dream, and we're being sort of subtly controlled by him through unseen forces. And the control mechanism he's really using is the people in positions of power on Earth, that he's manipulating them. But the reason why he's able to tap into their consciousness and manipulate them so easily is because they're his children. And this Lord of the Earth is Saturn. It's what happened to Saturn or Kronos after he was overthrown. He was imprisoned in this subterranean chamber, and the story goes that in this subterranean chamber there's this hidden sun, the central sun or the black sun, an artificial sun. And in some instances it seems like they're saying Saturn is the black sun. It's the same thing. So the black sun that the Nazis believed in was this hidden power that animated things on the surface. They sort of thought of it as the source of the electromagnetic field. And everything on Earth is sort of being subtly manipulated by the power of the black sun and what they call the green ray, the energy that comes from the black sun. Yeah. You were saying, okay, well, why are these people doing things in some sort of grand scheme that they're only in their lives? And well, it's because that they're really tapping into something larger than themselves, being controlled by something larger than themselves. And then, of course, some of them are actually members of secret societies that do occult rituals where they contact hidden entities. And the Nazis, for instance, were literally, or some of this, I guess, to specify, some of the secret societies that sort of spawned the Nazi movement. They were literally channeling messages from beings that they believed to be living in the center of the earth. And they gave them directions on how to build flying saucers and stuff. But, so if Nazis were doing things like that, or the progenitors of the Nazis were doing things like that, isn't it possible that there's some Masonic lodges that are doing things like that? And the attendants at those Masonic lodges are people in positions of power, I think that that's quite possible. Yeah.
The economy's been a little rough, man.
Oh, man, just brutal.
It's times like these that E-Trade can really help you replan your investments, though. It gives you the tools and research. Take control. Rise up.
Dude,
No.
What?
Stop.
What, I can't flex the golden pipes?
It's not the venue.
It's inspirational.
Any place.
Fine.
Okay, where was I?
Learn to fly again.
You're listening to Banal of America Audio.
No, I'm just poking at your funny bone. I am quite alarmed. I don't think you realize the danger. Like the people who think it's okay to bring shampoo on an airplane.
Well, it sort of goes back to the idea, too, that just because we don't believe in a lot of this stuff, not me and you, but I mean like the mainstream people, where they're sort of like, there's no secret societies. They're not doing rituals and stuff like that, or that's not real. Like, just because the mainstream doesn't believe in it doesn't mean if they don't believe in it, then it doesn't have that power to them.
Oh, no, it's, it doesn't really matter. I mean, the idea is that, we are trapped in the dream world of Saturn, and so the fact that we're unaware of it, that's almost the definition of a dream, except for a lucid dream. I guess that's the concept of waking up, right? You waking up from the Matrix. You sort of wake up and you realize that you're in this dream, but, can you really get out of the dream? I don't know. Or would you want to? When you have a lucid dream, that's when you sort of realize, like, oh, I'm really in control of this. I thought I was just, a victim of it all, but really, I can fly if I want to. I don't have to run away from the monster. I can beat it, And I think that I guess that's the best we can hope for. I think we are in a dream. We're in an illusion. I really believe that. That the universe is really always primal chaos, and the only thing that organizes the chaos into something meaningful is your body, your senses, your cognitive ability to put it all together. So I think that in that sense, we're always in a dream and an illusion, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's the nature of reality.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And that beyond just the body, too, it's the sort of like that collective agreement on things. How people all agree that the dollar's worth something, or people all agree that this is the way things should be, or, sort of like a self-sustaining normalcy, if you will.
Right. And when that agreement starts to break down, that's when everything becomes unstable and sort of surreal. And, and I think that's what's going on. Like, we can't agree on the value of the dollar anymore or anything else. So, we're in this period of instability right now where nothing is certain and things are turning to chaos, and it will be up to that, alchemical agent of the future to bring it all back together again and form something new out of it.
It makes you wonder, too, because I don't know if we really got into this. I mean, I sort of introduced this, but then I feel like we didn't really get into it, and this sort of adds to what I'm going to say next. So
yeah, go ahead.
How I was saying that I wonder if the alchemical idea of power being derived from babies comes from lost original knowledge of the power of stem cells. And I'm sort of wondering in turn, you talk about this Saturn age. I'm not a huge believer sort of in the ancient astronauts idea, but I am sort of a believer in this idea that the ancient cultures were more advanced than we give them credit for. And it just makes you wonder if there's sort of like a scientific background to a lot of this alchemical stuff. If there was science involved first, then it got lost and turned into alchemy because it was based on myths and legends and rumors and stuff, and now it's sort of coming back into fruition via science. What do you think of that?
Yeah. I think that I don't know exactly what to make of it, but I don't dismiss it. There's something literally real about this concept that the people of these various ages of the Gold Age, the Silver Age, the Bronze Age, and then there's the Stone Age in the Greek myths, where they said that after the flood, the hero of the flood myth was told to take stones from the ground and toss them behind him, and the stones, when they hit the ground, would magically turn into people, and that's the race that we presently are, according to that version of the myth. I really believe that there's something to that. There's some reason why the Greeks remembered the root races of these earlier ages as being somehow literally metallic, And I'm thinking that they're getting that from the perspective of these gods, whatever they were. And you said, you mentioned ancient astronauts. They could have been that. Who knows? It's like we can't possibly see. We can't get the perspective we need to understand what the gods really were and
right.
where they came from and all of that. But from their perspective, as the sort of genetic engineers of our race and all of these other races, they may have literally thought of us as, oh, those are the gold people because we put some sort of metallic element in them, and those are the silver people because we use silver for that one. And if you think about it, some of the versions of the myth say that we're the Iron Age. Well, what is the active element in your blood, but iron, and what makes it circulate in a way, we really are the Iron Age. We really are
right.
the Iron people,
And could they have known that really back in the day that the blood was primarily iron?
I don't think so.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder if there was like some advanced knowledge of the sciences that we don't give them credit for knowing. Even if it didn't have anything to do with ancient aliens. I don't know what else it could be. Or there's sort of another idea too that the human race reached levels where we're at now and then wiped itself out and started all over again sort of idea. You know what I mean? I mean, that could be something that could have happened. We don't know. But I do think that these sort of myths and legends and in turn, arcane sort of alchemical and occult stuff have roots in something that was tangible and real at some point.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. It's just that it's so hard for us to understand the perspective of the people that I guess were originally told these stories.
Right.
It seems like there's this memory of this cataclysm, and what was happening before the cataclysm is so vague. It's all mixed up, and I've tried to deconstruct the chronology of the pre-Diluvian history, and it's impossible. I find that all the pre-Diluvian stories are so messed up that you can go to from one culture and it'll tell you a chronology, and that all makes sense. And then you go to another culture and you'll find similar myths and names of people and things like that, but it's not in the same order. And it just seems like that. So I guess we have this myth of there being no time in the Golden Age, partially because we can't remember it well enough to reconstruct it anymore. And I'm really open to the idea. I don't know. I'm open to all ideas, I guess, is what I'm saying. It's like to ask, what planet did the ancient astronaut gods come from? Is to assume that they had to have a planet. To say,
right. Because
how did time start? Well, how can you start time?
Right, exactly. Well, I mean,
of time.
I use the ancient astronaut idea just as a sort of catch-all, but I mean, with the way science is advancing in this sort of like interdimensional idea too, that you don't know. These could have been people who could cross dimensions or something like that.
That's absolutely what I think, and it's a large part of the article that I just wrote. I'm talking about the concept of Saturn's kingdom as a timeless place that can be created at any time and place. And I also got into the concept of that's what Noah's Ark was, too. And in the Sumerian version of that story, the flood hero Utnapishtim was told through gods that were speaking to him through the walls of his house that there was going to be a flood and he needed to construct an ark to save himself. And so he made an ark out of his own home, and it was a perfect cube. And basically, he just boarded up his house in a way, and there was some construction, but at any rate, just think of it as what if you created an ark from your own bedroom? How would you do that? Well, it's very similar, I think, to how magicians will create ceremonial magicians will create sacred space in their temple, and then they'll have a magic circle that they create where they can either stand inside of the magic circle and then they can evoke demons in the room around them, and they'll be safe as long as they stay inside of the magic circle.
Right.
They'll be safe from the demons, or vice versa. You might evoke a demon into the circle, and then the demon can't leave the circle, and you can do what you need to with them without fear that he's going to do something to you. So at any rate, it's this idea that you can somehow through magical processes create a different dimension, really, create this timeless realm of Saturn within your own home. And I think that, that's really the concept that we're dealing with here with Noah's Ark. And in this mountain that the Ark always washes up on in these stories, they said the gods of Olympus went to the top of the mountain during the flood. What this really means is going up into a higher dimension to the point where, everything around you dissolves into chaos, but you're safe inside the hermetically sealed athanor of the temple that you've created, the ark that you've created. And then when you come out, you're in a whole new world. So, and then I think that if something like that literally happened, when you come out of the ark and you're in this new world, it may not all be solidified yet. It's like a new creation, and just as in the beginning of the world when it was created, in the Bible it talks about how there were these primeval waters, and then there's this process, these days of creation that it goes through, where everything sort of solidifies. I think that would have happened again to Noah when he comes out of the ark. And so you have this period in which the flood waters are subsiding, and he has to wait. He has this bird that he uses as a trial, to find out if there's any land yet to walk out on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if you think about this as an alchemical process, and yourself being Noah, you're like the baby inside the Athanor. I don't know. It's an interesting concept, I think.
I think there's some scientific underpinnings to this, which I would like to see you explore as you go forward.
Yeah, well, my husband is more into like evolutionary biology and stuff. He's more of an expert on that stuff, and maybe he can figure it out. I mean,
You guys can team up.
Well, yeah, I don't pretend to be a scientist at all, so I'm trying to analyze these myths and what they may have been trying to express, but I have absolutely no claim to know, whether it's the Pleiadians or what year it happened or anything like that. And as far as, what's the biology of the different root races, I don't know.
Yeah, who knows that kind of thing. That's anyone who tells you they know that, run away, because they're trying to sell you something. Speaking of which, I noticed in the book you're not a fan of monatomic gold. You don't believe in that whole thing?
Oh, well, I actually got a lot of crap from people when I did the Red Ice interview. I got lots of praise from the audience, but I did get several emails from members of the monatomic gold cult who are really passionate about that and thought that I had defamed them. And so I told them, I'll take a second look at it, but which I haven't really done. So, give me time before I revise my statement on that. But my experience with that, I've known some people who knew some people who had some bad experiences with that, having to do with the stuff that they were buying. They took it for years and then had liver problems.
Oh, God.
And then found out that it was table salt. They had someone analyze what they'd been swallowing all this time, and they were just taking massive amounts of salt. And it was actually causing them health problems. So
buyer beware.
I need to take a second look at it, and maybe I didn't mean to say that anyone in particular was ripping anyone else off. I'm not making any claims like that, but it definitely seems, I don't know, kind of it needs to be proven to me that that someone has discovered a cure-all, and it has to do with transmuting gold into another dimension. I mean, that's what I remember reading is the process.
Yeah, it was something like that. I've only sort of vaguely looked at it myself, so I can't. All I know is that it was sort of like somehow they boil gold and turn it into powder or something like that, and that turns it into monatomic gold, and then you eat it.
I mean, it sounds like they're definitely trying to recreate, the alchemical process, and one of the ways that you could use alchemy, according to the old text, was you could create an alchemical substance that could be swallowed, and then supposedly it would cure everything in your body and make you live forever. And so it definitely sounds like they're trying to do that. How well it's worked, I don't know. I never tried it myself, and I would really have to know more about it before I would swallow that stuff. But the people that wrote to me, I don't know, maybe I didn't mean to offend anyone, but the passion with which they responded and sort of the fierceness with which they criticized me, and also the fact that I got a cluster of these emails all together.
Yeah.
What it reminded me of is the time that I said something defamatory about Scientology.
Uh-oh.
When I was writing for the school paper when I was 16, and I got the same sort of response, except it was a bit more intense, and they actually tracked me down.
Oh no!
They tried to do a personal intervention to convince me that Scientology was great. So I don't know. I guess I'm probably going to get even more letters now. But the people that wrote to me reminded me of Scientologists.
Well, that at least they didn't. I was afraid you were going to say they tried to beat you up. So instead of trying to beat you up, they just try to indoctrinate you, right?
Yeah, what? How could you question the,
teaching of Xenu?
Exactly.
Great. Now I'm going to get letters.
Probably.
Well, based on aren't you banned in Pakistan too, or something like that?
I don't. No
Any
one
news
has,
on that fatwa? Are you free of that yet, or are you, no plans to head on over to Pakistan to find out? I assume.
Well, look, I'm trying to look. I still stand by my position on that issue of that people should be free to make Muhammad cartoons or any other type of cartoon they want to, and that it's not the job of any non-Muslim to observe Muslim taboos. Which is why the Supreme Court of Pakistan had banned me and my husband and my website and tried to extradite us.
Wow.
To face the death penalty. But I guess what I'm getting at is I was hoping you wouldn't bring that up.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine. It's fine. No, I don't really care. What I'm saying is that I don't want any fatwas because I'm planning on going to Turkey and Alexandria at the end of in October, because we're going to have there's some sort of tour we're going to do that I'll announce the details of later, and I'm hoping that no one comes and chops my head off.
Oh, Jesus, Tracy, will you be careful? I wouldn't even go anywhere near there. Oh, Jesus. Couldn't they grab you in Turkey and bring you to Pakistan?
No, Turkey's supposed to be civilized.
Oh, famous last words of Tracy Twyman, folks. Oh my God! All right, well, keep us informed on that. I'll keep an eye out for for the news when you head over to Turkey. Jeez.
Sure.
What's that all about? Some kind of adventure?
Yeah. I wish I could tell you more, but
it's still
we're not
under
gonna
wraps
announce it until April, and then I'll tell everyone it's going to be a trip that people can go on, and we're going to be giving lectures and going to ancient sites, and we're going to be talking about the myth of Atlantis and this golden age concept, and actually going to the places where some of these myths happened, and or the historical things that they're based on, and having a good time being initiated into the mysteries of the golden age. So I'll have a itinerary and prices and everything posted probably within a month or so. Nice.
Do you want to go a little longer, or you got something going on? I was going to try and...
Well, if you've got some more to say, then let's say it.
I always have more to say, Tracy. That's my job. Now, not to get into the too predictive realm of things, but, based on the economy right now, where do you sort of see things headed out as the year progresses? Because as we talked about earlier, you're saying that things aren't going to improve, that, the worst is sort of yet to come. We may see even worse, economic downturns and whatnot. So I guess, what do you see that might happen, and what should we look for as clues to this sort of stuff unfolding?
Well, I'll tell you this. We, as the general public, we need to give up on this idea that it is going to get better by itself. It being, the current system of money and debt. It can't. There's $700 trillion worth of derivatives that can't be paid, clogging up the international system. That's been true for years. And nothing that they've devised is ever going to fix it, because the entire system, every time you create money, you're creating more debt associated with it. So you can never get less debt. You will always get more. So it's got to die. And people have got to get over the fact that their pensions will collapse, and their savings, if they're dollars or based on dollars, are going to collapse. The value of their house is going to collapse. You need to get over it, because I'm serious.
I know, it's just such a harsh thing. It's like, listen, you're going to lose everything you have. Just get over it. But I guess I'm listening. Go ahead.
Well, if you're someone who has a lot of resources and you've got it all in bank accounts and stocks and things like that, you need to put it into something physical that you can use or sell to someone who could use it in the future world.
Yeah.
Because, gas is going to be valuable. Property is going to be valuable, not in terms of dollars. Stop thinking about your house as how many dollars it's worth. It's like, can I live in this place for the rest of my life? Can my children use it? Can I sell it to someone in the future for something that I could use? That's the way you need to start thinking about the real basis of wealth. And if you have money now, I would say transfer it into those things as quickly as possible, because this collapse that I'm talking about it's in process right now, and then, you know, the next big drop down could happen at any moment. They're going to have another wave of quantitative easing, which is printing enormous amounts of money out of nothing and then having the government itself buy it through. It's complicated, but they try to fake you out. They try to pretend that there's banks in the Cayman Islands and stuff buying these bonds, but they're really doing it on behalf of the Federal Reserve. So the Treasury's printing money. They're borrowing from the Federal Reserve in order to print that money, but then the Federal Reserve is buying the bonds that it's based on. So it's like eating yourself. If we get back to alchemy, it's like this Ouroboros serpent eating itself.
Yeah. Now, are you familiar with Bix Weir and his work at all?
Someone else told me.
It might have been me
him.
when we were setting up the interview. Road to Ruta and that whole thing. Have you looked into it at all?
No, please go ahead, elaborate.
The gist of it is that, and I'm going to do a terrible job with this. I apologize to Bix. You should definitely check out his stuff. That there's sort of, and you kind of alluded to this too earlier, that there's sort of like these good forces at work behind the scenes in this system, in this economic system that's been thrust upon the world, and that there's people within the system that are aware of this impending financial collapse and are sort of, you know, have a plan to deal with it after the fact. And, you know, there's going to be this big collapse, and both sides, the good and the bad, have been orchestrating the collapse, you know, for their own purposes. You know, the good side realizes that the fiat system can never last, so it created the fiat system to sort of milk it for what it's worth, then collapse, and then rebuild. And the bad guys sort of want, like, a new world order. So, I mean, what do you think of that? Like I said, I probably butchered the theory in general, but that's sort of the general idea of it.
Well, okay, yeah, I need to read about it more, I guess, but
yeah,
general idea, I would say my reaction is this, that there are several factions of good guys or bad guys, and then several factions of people that consider themselves to be good guys. What that means is entirely relative and subjective to them, because we don't know. We're not involved. They haven't initiated us into those mysteries of what they intend to do with us and our wealth at the end of it. Mm-hmm. So as far as someone calling themselves the good guy and they're going to work behind the scenes on our behalf, you know, I reject that as being done in my name. I am the only one that can save me, and that goes for everyone else too. And the idea that some savior from another planet or from another secret society or the good witch of the West or whatever is going to come and save you without you having to understand these concepts and save yourself is wrong. I mean, anyone who arrogates to themselves that responsibility of manipulating the lives of others and deciding who lives and who dies and who gets to have wealth and who doesn't and how much the money in your wallet should be worth, those people need to be overthrown and never given any power. I mean, if you're asking what my opinion is in my value system, I think, you know, no, I reject that.
Okay.
Maybe they're trying to do it. You know, they can call themselves good and say that they're trying to do it. That's
so,
great.
okay.
You know,
so you're saying like you reject people who say they're doing it for good, but you don't reject the idea that there are people who think that they're doing it for good.
Exactly. But yeah, you want to work behind the scenes with your little secret society and your banker friends trying to create a good system of international economics and international political control. Well, all political control and all banking as it's set up right now is about people owning other people and selling them without their permission. So if you think there's some good way of doing that, I disagree.
Well, part of the road to Ruta theory is additionally that, you know, there's going to be this big collapse. The good guys, now I'm starting to remember a little bit more of it, the good guys, they're going to sort of bring the United States back into sort of a separatist situation where we're going to produce everything on our own. We're not going to get involved. You know, it's the reverse of a New World Order, I guess you could say. And I guess from what I can recall, Bix was saying that, you know, the United States has plenty of natural resources and that we've been sort of hoarding them all this time and using the rest of the world's natural resources because we knew that eventually this reverse New World Order is going to happen because the good guys behind the scenes were orchestrating it. What do you think of that? Does the United States have all these resources, or I mean, you're sort of you're up on all this economic stuff.
I think we've got lots of resources, and that we would have a very robust economy if we only imported things that we actually needed from other countries, as opposed to, like we were talking about earlier, shipping apples to China to be waxed and brought back.
Right. That's just sad.
Yeah, there's lots of stuff we could produce and consume here, and we could be exporting more as well. And other countries could be doing that too, and then we could be wasting a lot less resources in shipping things around. But it's like the resources aren't considered to have any value. The only thing that has value is the artificial, illusory dollar. And, you know, that's what all of these economic policies are built around, is people getting their hands on dollars and controlling the value of and distribution of dollars. And they're not thinking at all about how many actual resources, in other words, how much actual wealth is being wasted in order to do this. So I think it'd be great if, you know, in the future, people in countries could take care of themselves more and be, you know, healthier and happier for it, because they're not wasting resources, and their labor, the value of their labor would go up. You know, that'd be great. And it doesn't mean that we have to be isolationist or that we don't communicate and interact with one another. And quite the opposite. The world is more interactive than it's ever been. That's part of the reason why there's so many social revolutions going on right now, is because anyone at any time can go online and get information about just about anything. And even things that used to be super secret and hard to find, it's just out there now. You know, WikiLeaks is a huge resource. And then you've got Facebook and things like that, where it's making it just really easy for people in different countries to make friends and compare notes. And so you used to be able to, you know, a government could sort of keep their own domestic population ignorant of what they're doing in other countries, or tell them a false version of what life is like in other countries. And that can't happen anymore. You know, I mean, some people might still believe the version they get on TV, but those are mainly older people. And, you know, people like in their 50s and younger are online. They have tons of friends in other countries, and they have a way different perspective now because of that. And then you have this instant communication if you do need to have a social revolution, if you do need to have people be able to coordinate something really quickly without having to physically be in the same space, you can do that now. So, you know, we're going to be a more cosmopolitan world than ever in the future, and it doesn't have to involve a global supply chain of slave labor. You know, that's not needed.
Yeah, we just hope we can break the cycle and free ourselves from that global supply chain. Although you're kind of saying that it's going to fall apart anyway, right?
Yeah, there's no effort needed on our part except to try to keep ourselves safe from the fallout. But the collapse is happening, and as it collapses, people are they're going to still need to do business. In fact, more than ever, you know, you're going to have needs for goods and services to be produced locally. So actually, I think the recovery begins as soon as the collapse is allowed to happen. You know, you can have local currencies created, and that'll start happening immediately, and people can start doing business with one another. And that's the problem, is that, you know, we're required by law to use the dollar for everything, and to be involved in these systems of government and taxation and these federal rules about, you know, labor laws and how you can produce things. And there's so many rules, you know, and we're all trapped into this system that's just not allowed to change at all, even though it's not working and everyone's literally dying because
Yeah.
their economic lives are dying because of this. It's if you could just free yourself from that yoke, that we no longer have to be pinned to this dollar, then that's then the invisible hand that Adam Smith wrote about, the sort of mystical force that underpins the economy, where people act in their own self-interest to try to get the things they want in the best quality at the lowest possible price. That if everyone is allowed to do that as an individual, but the government is not allowed to come in with force of arms and violently threaten other people to do what they want, to try to create a monopoly system for certain rich people that they like, that are contributing to the politicians' bank accounts and stuff. If you can get rid of that and the artificial manipulation of the economy, then people's in following their own selfish desires is actually good, because that keeps things at high quality and low price, but everyone still gets what they need. That's the ideal to me. That would be the golden age. If we could really have the invisible hand actually allowed to function.
Well, is that what you think is going to happen when everything collapses? That a more robust and sort of natural economy will sort of develop?
Yeah. I think the invisible hand, operates. It's operating all the time. It operated in communist Russia. It operates in North Korea. It operates wherever people are. But it's how well it is allowed to function is relative to how much government control you have, and other. If you don't want to call it government, then sometimes you'll have corporations that do the same thing. They gain control over the economy because they can pay police and soldiers to threaten other people and make them do what they want. And that's really the basis of government and corporate power, and it's the reason why our economy consistently always gets screwed up and manipulated, so that all of the wealth that's produced by the people flows in one direction only. It's confiscated through a system of taxation and other things. It's channeled to the ruling elite, and always, the people suffer. The people are never allowed to enjoy the fruits of their own labor. That's a corrupt system that comes from greedy people colluding and then using violence to threaten other people. And that's the only reason why the invisible hand doesn't work. That's the reason why you can't have economic freedom.
Yeah, but then when you think about it, hasn't it always sort of been that way? I mean, weren't there always kings and servants and everything else? I mean, you wonder if that's just the human nature, if you will, where greed just even if the whole system collapses tomorrow and then we develop a new system, eventually that system will become corrupted as well, and the whole process will start all over again, I think.
Yes, that's why the golden age can only exist in a timeless state, a theoretical state, because it doesn't really ever happen.
So is it more metaphorical?
It's a metaphor. It's a metaphor that I don't know. Here's what I think of it is. It's in potentia. It exists in non-existence, but it influences everything that does exist, just like this hidden kingdom at the center of the earth concept. I think it's real in the sense that, or I don't know, I guess you could say it's unreal, but that's a part of our existence, There's at the heart of every atom, there is something mysterious that you can't explain, and that's going on in the whole universe, So the golden age exists in a timeless state at all times. And as far as us going into a new golden age now, of course, it would only be temporary, but it would be a start over. It would be going from one dying system to a new one. And so you'd have, the whole course of history then, the next several thousand years, for it to become as corrupt as it is now.
Yeah.
Theoretically.
I don't know if I want to be around at the start of a new golden age. Sounds like that would be a lot of setting things up and planning and everything else. You really want to be in the golden age in its prime, right? Well, I guess there's no time, right? So, but
right. Well,
you know what I mean? The transition to the golden age is going to be difficult. So it's like, I don't even know if I'd make it.
Me too. I don't know. I mean, I think we've talked about it before. I don't have the resources necessary to be able to survive, so I don't to survive such a cataclysm. I don't know if I will.
Now, in light of all this sort of idea of changing of the ages and that sort of thing, I'm tempted to bring up the infamous 2012. I mean, what do you think of that? Does this somehow tie into all this in a way?
I think it may, in a way. It's, that's the sort of thing that it would be asinine for me to make a real prediction, although I'm writing about the symbolism of it and the connections of it in a future article that you will see soon. But I'm not going to just make an ass of myself and say what's going to happen on 20.
No, I don't mean that. I just mean, have you looked at it in the sense that, is there some connection here between those myths and legends of a change of an epoch to what you're talking about with the age of Saturn and all this other stuff?
Well, there's some connection. One of the things I wrote about in the past when I did Dagobah's Revenge magazine, I decoded out of some literature from the secret society called the Priory of Zion that they had apparently this secret of a calendar that it seemed to me was a calendar that we haven't yet gone into, but it can, perhaps in the future, it could actually correspond to the year. And it's a calendar that's sort of observed, but it's not practical right now. It's the lunar calendar.
Oh yeah, I'm a big fan of lunar calendar.
Yeah, 364 days in the year, and 12 or 13 months of exactly 28 days each. Every week is the same. Starts on the same day of the week and everything.
And one day out of time.
Right, exactly. But what I wrote about in my article a long time ago was theorizing, well, what if things just change slightly? The orbit and the tilt and everything just change slightly on our planet, so that maybe in the future we could have what they call an Alicot calendar, which is when the solar calendar and the lunar calendar correspond exactly. And right now they're a day and a few hours off. The solar calendar is a little bit longer. So, but what we've had recently, interestingly enough, is we keep having incidents that cause minor shifts in the tilt of the axis, the weight of the Earth, the shape of the Earth, and the magnetic pole.
Right, like the earthquake.
Well, in my article years ago that I wrote about this concept that there's maybe a secret Priory of Zion calendar that's supposed to be used at a future age, I talked about Ophiuchus or Fucus, the serpent bearer, which is a constellation, and in some New Age theories they think that there should be a 13th zodiac sign, really, because the zodiac doesn't correspond to the way it was back in ancient Babylon when they came up with the thing. And that's been true for thousands of years. The zodiac has been wrong for thousands of years, but for some reason, around the turn of this last year, around the beginning of January, there was there was a big change in the magnetic pole.
Yeah.
It wobbles around anyway, but it was a significant change in one day. It was bigger than normal, and they had to recalibrate
airports
compasses
and stuff.
on airports and stuff. Yeah, on airplanes. So, and then right around that time that happened, the Minnesota Planetarium Society came out and said, we need to change the zodiac that everyone observes because of this pole shift, and there really should be another zodiac sign in there. And so that was a story in the news for a few days, and I don't know if it really caught on, but I don't know. I get spam frequently where it says your zodiac sign may have changed, so it must be popular.
Yeah, it created quite a meme, and accompanied by a lot of various sort of arcane conspiracy theories, about what it was all about. There had to be some. What's the reasoning behind this? Whether it's some planetary change that's about to happen, or we're undergoing, or is it, something else? Who knows?
Well, I had said that, I think maybe there is, some elite cabal somewhere that decided that maybe we should bring in Ophiuchus or Fucus now, because in the Priory of Zion literature I was talking about, that's one of the things they mention. They say that we should have a 13-house zodiac sign, zodiac system with Ophiuchus in it, And there's a poem that the Priory of Zion published called Les Serpents Rouges, where they have each of the stanzas is dedicated to one of the houses of the zodiac, and Ophiuch is one of them. And so I thought when I was, finding the clues in their literature pointing to this calendar, and it was really arcane. I mean, I'm the only one who ever found it. I don't think anyone else had even guessed that this thing was in there. And but they talk about Ophiuchus too, and I thought, well, this must be part of it. That in a future calendar system, you'll have each month associated with one of the houses of the zodiac, and so you have to add a 13th one in there. And then when this pole shift happened, and this meme started popping up, I thought this can't be coincidence, because why do you need to bring Ophiuchus in now when the zodiac's been wrong for thousands of years? And here's an interesting thing that I published on my website. Someone told me that there's 12 images that came with the Kindle. That was the new version of the Amazon Kindle that came out right around Christmas last year.
Yeah.
And of those 12 images, they seem kind of random. There's like an author and a cathedral and just different things, a bird or something, just different things. And one of them is Ophiuchus. And, what are the odds of that? That was just a couple months before the pole shift and the explosion of this meme. There's no other zodiac signs that are being used as screensavers on the Kindle, but there's just 12 images, and Ophiuchus is one of them. Isn't that weird?
It's strange. There's something to this story. It's, you just wonder about who's pulling the strings, we don't know what their agenda is at the end of the day. It's scary.
Yeah. And then the 2012 thing, I mean, I got into 2012 a little bit when I originally wrote that article about the 364-day calendar, because how the Mayans have actually several different calendar systems, and then the Mayan calendar that they talk about it's like this big circle with different rings in it, and each ring is a different type of calendar system. Yeah,
it's all very confusing.
Well, and then they all come to an end right now, or at 2012. Anyway, I had sort of delved into that in my old article, because one of the calendar systems, one of the rings on there is a lunar calendar, is a 364-day one. So, and then the number 13 has all sorts of important symbolic meanings in the Mayan calendrical system, having to do with rebirth.
Interesting.
So yeah, the symbol at the very top of the calendar, the Mayan calendar disc thing that they always show, there's this little, I don't know, like carrot thing, like an arrow pointing up.
Yeah.
And that they call that 13 Cain, and that's like the central image. That's the starting and ending of the whole cycle. So anyway, yeah, I think there might be something to it. I just don't know. I don't know what. I certainly hope it's not horrible cataclysm, but I can't rule that out. And in general, when astrologically or astronomically, when an age passes over from one to the next, first of all, you only realize it after the fact, like hundreds of years later. In terms of has there actually been a social change?
Right.
Yeah, you only realize that later. But the moment astrologically that one age changes to the next is very specific. It's a point in time.
Right.
So just like 2012 is, it's a point in time. Maybe that is the point where one age changes to the next. But that doesn't mean anything happens at that particular moment any more than something happens at midnight on New Year's Eve. It's just it's an arbitrarily chosen moment where we say, okay, now it's the next day. But you only realize later why one day is different from the other.
Exactly. To leave people on sort of an informative note here, like we didn't really get to what they should look for as far as warning signs here in the next few weeks, months, and the rest of the year, if not next year or whatever. If we're on the precipice here, what should people be keeping an eye on aside from like gas prices and stuff like that?
Well, the release of QE3, the next explosion of liquidity, the next multi-$100 billion purchase of bonds by the Federal Reserve itself, of Treasury bonds. That is another inflation bomb that's going to be released. And the pattern of states that are dying and going into hyperinflation is that things like that just happen more and more frequently. You know, we just had a wave of quantitative easing a few months ago, and before that it had been like a year and a half till we had the first one. So if we have QE3, then, you know, presumably QE4 will be right on the heels of it shortly afterwards, and that's when things just start devolving. But I'm not Gerald Celente, so I can't give you specific advice about investments, and I don't claim to know what day anything is going to happen. But, I also think that they're going to bring in the SDR, so you can look for the dollar losing a great deal of value, but at the same time, the whole global system will try to find a new equilibrium or a new footing with this new global currency. And the U.S. dollar probably, at least in the beginning, won't cease to exist. It'll just be a domestic currency again instead of being an international currency. Or it'll be kind of like the pound is right
euro.
now, where, and the euro. Like these are part of the international monetary system's basket of currencies that they use. They put them together, and they have a little algorithm that they use to try to determine how much everyone else's currency should be based on the relative values of those currencies in the basket. Now, the way it's been up until recently is you've got the yen and the pound and the euro and the dollar in the basket. Now, the Chinese want the yuan in the basket as well. And every time you put in a new currency in the basket, that disrupts that changes the algorithm, right? It changes the relationship, and it gives that currency a different power in international currency markets that it didn't have before. And of course, the way it's been up until now is that the dollar had an inordinate amount of power in the basket compared to everyone else.
Right.
Well, now it's just going to be brought down to basically the same relative level as everyone else's currencies in the basket.
All right.
So
not as scary as the last time we talked, but still pretty scary.
Well, look, hey, scary is relative, isn't it? Scary is
That's
relative
true.
Because a lot of things have happened since the last time we talked that were scary at the time to think about, and now they've happened, and we're used to it, I
like
mean,
what? Like people all losing their houses and shit?
Oh, yeah. The mass unemployment. I don't know if you've been to the grocery store lately, but we're starting to get major waves of food price inflation, which is one of the factors in why there's social revolutions going on in the Middle East right now. Is those people, they can't even afford to eat.
Right, because if you think our prices are going up, their prices are going up too, and they make like nothing. So they're hurting worse than us.
Yeah, and they're spending probably 70% of their income on food already. They were before this happened.
Right.
And so, that stuff is happening. The reason why it doesn't feel any worse, I think, is because gas prices went down after the 2008. They didn't ever go down to $2 or $1.50 like they were before. But this is the new normal. We're used to that now.
Right.
But everything else has really fallen apart just more and more. And as far as the international stability of other states, it really has changed a lot since last time we talked. You've got Greece going down, Iceland, Ireland, and the euro. They're basically saying they need to phase it out. Things have totally happened since the last time we talked. We just got used to it. As it happens, it seems normal to you. So that's why I don't want to make a prediction, because it won't matter. By the time it comes true, you won't even feel like you won't say, "Oh, she told me that." It'll be normal.
Right. No, I wasn't asking you for predictions. Don't worry. I know you're no Gerald Celente. I like Gerald. I don't know. We shouldn't pick on him.
No, I love him too, and I can't hold a candle to that. I don't have the statistical knowledge to be able to say what future trends are going to be formed by current events. I can only analyze the sort of mythological and metaphorical basis behind it, and therefore I can make a very general prediction about what the next stage is going to be.
Well, you're fantastic at analyzing the mythical and metaphorical basis, as we've established here in this conversation. So, you know, I hope I kept up as well as I thought I did. So.
Oh, yeah, I think it's been a great conversation. I've enjoyed it.
So, you got the new book here, Money Grows on the Tree of Knowledge, and you got that not just as a hard copy book, but also an e-book, and you're in the world of Kindle, I assume, right?
Yeah. What we had done was we put out a limited edition print version that is completely sold out now, but there will be another one that's not limited edition soon that you'll be able to buy on Amazon. And also, you can buy from us an ebook version of it, or you can get a Kindle version from Amazon. If you're interested in supporting me in my research, I could certainly use it, and the best way to do that is to make a purchase directly from my website. You can go to tracyrtwyman.com to find out how to do that. And I also take donations. And honestly, the best purchase you can make is an ebook or several ebooks, because it's really pure profit for me. I'm not going to lie. It's an electronic thing that I send to you, and I don't have to expend any further resources to get it. So I get to keep all of the money that you send me, less the PayPal fee. But it's not like I guess I am sort of alchemically making gold here every time I sell an ebook. But consider that I put
all the work into writing
and hours into that. So I feel like I certainly, if I get more compensation for my work, I won't feel like I don't deserve it. Is I guess the way to put it. So if you want to help me, it's certainly welcome and appreciated.
Yeah, absolutely. You're like a farmer. You've built the crop of the book, and now you're selling it. You shouldn't feel bad about that. I mean, I don't see what's wrong with that. The work, the research is tremendous, and the books are outstanding. So.
Thank you very much.
People should definitely check them out. I got to get into this Kindle thing. I haven't really dived into Kindle yet, but the more I talk to you and other people, it seems like that's the new direction of books.
Absolutely. I think that's a brilliant new development, and I'm pretty excited about it. It's gonna keep publishing alive even as everything else collapses.
So what else? What do we have coming up from Tracy Twyman aside from the big trip, which details will be revealed soon? What else is going on? What can people expect from you here for the remainder of 2011?
Well, I'm developing these concepts of the new golden age and Saturn and the sort of the hidden kingdom concept, and I'm getting into the black sun and the idea of there's theories about the role of electromagnetism in the universe that I'm learning about that actually tie into everything I've been talking about Saturn and the Golden Age. It's hard to explain. You'll have to read the article. But they're physics concepts that contradict accepted concepps right now about nuclear physics and the theory of relativity and everything. It's a different way of looking at the universe. And when you do, then you can actually explain some of the myths of the past in a different way. And I'll explain all of that in future articles. So you'll be able to read articles about this stuff over the next few months on tracyrtwyman.com. And then eventually a new book will be produced. And also we've got that trip coming up where we'll be actually visiting some of these places, and people can hear lectures about it. Some of the places that are involved and some of the historical sites that pertain to Greek myths of the past.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's what I got going on. I'm going to develop these concepts further, and new books coming out, and hopefully get it all developed before the new age dawns. And here's one thing I'll throw out for you that I forgot to mention. December 23rd, 2012. That's the end of the Mayan calendar. It's also the beginning of Saturnalia. It's the St. Dagobert's Day. But here's the most important thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is the 99th anniversary of the creation of the Federal Reserve System.
Wow.
Now, guess what? Okay, there's 3 standard lengths of a business contract in common law, and the longest one is 99 years. In other words, you pretty much, according to English law and American law, if you institute a corporation, the longest you can charter it for is 99 years. That doesn't mean you can't renew it at the end of the 99 years, but you generally, if you have such a charter, then you usually revise it and turn it into something else at the end of the 99 years. So the charter for the Federal Reserve System is about to be up on the very date that the Mayan calendar will end. And, I find that hard to believe as a coincidence, but I don't know. I can't really explain exactly what it means. It seems to me like that it might tie in with what I'm saying, though, of the death of an old economic system and the birth of a new one.
Very interesting, yeah. It's like, it's weird to think that these dudes who create the Federal Reserve 99 years ago, they're up on the Mayan prophecies and stuff. It's very strange. You wonder, how that all comes together.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they were. Maybe they just had a different
calendar of some sort.
Secret calendar in their own Masonic lodge or secret society that they were part of at the time that made them pick that date. Or maybe it was just the forces of the universe operating without their awareness.
Could be. Well, Tracy, it's been great catching up with you and delving into these topics. I got to say, as I said at the beginning of the show, you are one of the sharpest people in esoterica, genre for genre. And every time I have a conversation with you, I feel like you're pulling me up to your level because you're operating on just this wavelength that I can only sort of glimpse and get an idea of when I read your stuff. So, I'm just really amazed by the depth and the level of research and insight you have into so much stuff, especially a lot of these really arcane topics that I can't really wrap my mind around. Like I said, I feel like you pull me up to those levels when we talk. So hopefully I'm not pulling you down.
No, not at all. Of course. No, I enjoy this very much.
And, it's been great having you back on the show. Obviously, this won't be the last time we talk to you. We're going to have you back on in the future. But, best of luck during these tumultuous times. And hopefully, next time we're talking, we'll be able to see the light at the end of the tunnel on its way, and it won't be an oncoming train.
That'll be great. I look forward to it. Thank you so much.
That does it for this week's edition of BOA Audio's Season 6. Big thanks to Tracy Twyman for coming on the show and sharing so much information and so much of her time. Check out our website, www.tracyrtwyman.com. Fantastic website full of awesome info on all the stuff she has been talking about over the last couple hours here on the program. Moving right along now, it's time for BOA Audio listener feedback. And we got 3 emails here, so let's just dive on into the mailbag. First one comes from Steven, no hometown listed, and here's what he has to say. I really enjoy your show and have listened to every episode. I enjoy the questions you ask and the guests you have, but I do have a suggestion and a question. Why do all your shows have 2 intros? First, there's the intro where you tell us about the guest and their background, talk about what you like about their book, their research, and all, but then you do basically the same thing again on the pre-recorded interview part of the show. It takes so much time up that can be used for longer interviews. I just thought I'd ask and hope you can address this on the show itself. Thank you, Stephen. Well, thank you for writing in, Stephen. I appreciate your feedback. I am appreciative also, obviously, of your longtime support of the program. And you definitely raise a very interesting question. I guess the real reason why we have such long intros at the beginning of the pre-recorded part is just a matter of habit. That's how we started doing the program, with those sort of short summaries of the impending conversation. And over time, they've just gotten longer and longer as we've taken care of in-house notes at the beginning and a whole bunch of other stuff. And I've become cognizant of the fact that those intros at the beginning are definitely getting a little bit too long. So I'm going to try and cut those down. Although you do raise sort of perhaps a misconception here where you say that time could be used for longer interviews. The pre-recorded parts at the beginning of the show are taped well after the interviews, so there's really no correlation between the length of one and the length of the other. They're really unrelated, although I agree with you on the point that sometimes a lot of stuff seems to get repeated, or just a lot of ground seems to get recovered between the 2 introductions, and I've become more and more, as I said, cognizant of that, and I'm trying to do my best to tighten up those intros and get folks right into the conversation, because I know a lot of people tune in to hear that and just zip right through the pre-recorded introduction. Believe me, I'm well aware of that. So I'm going to try and tighten those up and hopefully get people right into the meat of the episode as soon as possible. You know, the show is an evolving beast, and the more I hear from folks with these kind of suggestions and stuff, the more it affects me as I move forward in how we put it all together. So I appreciate the feedback, Stephen, and thank you for being thoughtful about it and not being rude about it or anything like that, and really coming at it with an inquisitive mind. Next email comes from Andrea, no hometown listed. Here's what she has to say. I'm a newcomer to the show. I've been digging through the archives, and I'm really enjoying it. Good, creepy stuff. I have a question. Is there a topic that seriously scares you? Something you hope isn't real? If so, what do you do about it? For me, it's the jinn. The thought of them scares the crap out of me. All I can do is try not to dwell on it and think good thoughts. Congrats on a great show, and looking forward to the rest of Season 6. Andrea. Thank you for writing in, Andrea. Welcome to the fold. I hope you're enjoying your swim through the deep archives of BOA Audio. Tons of episodes there to check out, well over 150 programs, so chances are there's going to be some other stuff there that spooks you as you keep on listening. I gave it some thought, really, and there's not too much that particularly scares me, although I guess the idea of sort of being harassed or watched or something like that kind of creeps me out, in the sense that I've heard from guests, you know, who say that they've been harassed by the government and stuff like that. Thankfully, that sort of thing's never happened to me, but it does sort of put me off a little bit, more than really the specific topics that we cover here on the show. I'm not particularly worried about UFOs or Bigfoot or something like a global conspiracy. I mean, that's completely out of my hands. Something like 2012, you know, let's say there is some giant, disastrous, world-shaking event where, you know, 90% of the population dies. What am I supposed to do about that? What could I possibly do about that? Really nothing. So I just don't worry about things that are out of my hands. The weirder stuff I find that I look at with more fascination. So things like ghosts and UFOs and Bigfoot, I'm really just more intrigued by rather than frightened. But I guess the whole idea, you know, of government harassment, people reading your mail or listening to your phone calls, that kind of tweaks me out a little bit. Thankfully, that sort of thing hasn't happened to me, but certainly that's something that has sort of gotten under my skin over the last few years, as I've talked to more and more people who've had some really chilling stories about odd coincidences, quote unquote, that have happened to them over the years. Anyway, thank you for writing in, Andrea. Much appreciated. Keep an eye out for those jinn. They have heard your call, and now they're probably hot on your trail. I probably shouldn't say that. Now she's going to be even more scared. So don't worry about the jinn, Andrea. I'm hoping for your sake that they are more mischievous than evil. Final email this week comes from Lawrence, no hometown listed. Here's what he has to say. The Stan Gordon interview was awesome. Maybe you are just too young to remember this and to ask the question, but back in the 70s they had a TV show called The $6 Million Man, and there were a series of episodes in which he encounters a Bigfoot, and then discovers that Bigfoot is working for ancient aliens who are hiding in an underground base. The episodes are on YouTube if you look up History of Bigfoot and Bionic Man. I just watched a few clips for the first time since I was like 7 years old, and it is amazing. There is even an abduction-like scene in which Steve Austin is lying on a table, and the aliens are standing around him, reading his mind. I thought for sure you were going to mention this to Stan Gordon, since the show clearly ties Bigfoot with aliens. My guess is that the story was inspired by the PA events a few years earlier. Maybe you could watch it and then get that Hollywood and UFOs guy back on. Was his name Bruce Rux or something like that? He would definitely be worth bringing back. Thanks for the great programming. I know you deny it, but if you are indeed burning out, don't let us listeners bully you into keeping on with it. I am currently publishing a podcast about the Mahabharata, and I know that it will come to an end when I get to the end of the story. You, on the other hand, don't really have a good stopping point. You just need to quit when you've done what you set out to do. Maybe after you've interviewed Stan Friedman for the 10th time, you'll throw in the towel. Either way, take care, Lawrence. Thanks for writing in, Lawrence. Let me address your points here as we go along the list. First of all, I thoroughly enjoyed the Stan Gordon interview as well. Thought it was fantastic and fascinating that this story had gone under the radar for so many years. I know a lot of people had heard about it, but you'd think it would be much, much bigger than it really is nowadays. Regarding the $6 Million Man episode, that is definitely way before my time. I was born in 79, so I really was not even cognizant of the $6 Million Man Bigfoot storyline, but perhaps I'll bring it up with Bruce Rux next time he's on the show. Good callback on your part, Lawrence. Bruce is a good friend. We still keep in touch quite a bit, and we are working on bringing him back here for Season 6, so stay tuned for that. And since you have mentioned this story, I will try and bring it up to him when we get him back on the show. With regards to the whole idea of burning out, I just can't go over this enough with you guys. I'm not burning out. The real story of 2011 so far here for BOA Audio is that going into this year, I really want to take the steps to make sure that BOA Audio can survive in perpetuity, that we can keep this program going over the next few years at least. And the only way for me to do that was to find sufficient funding on a serious level to keep the whole operation running. And that's what I've been doing. I've been working side gigs and side jobs to make that happen. And as that's gone down, it's been sort of hit or miss. It's been touch and go. We've been trying to find the right formula to make it all happen. I'm sitting here right now very, very confident that we have found the magic touch, if you will, on how we can make this happen. I'm working at a very awesome job right now that is very flexible and very supportive of BOA. So I feel like we're going to look back on these early months of 2011 and say, yeah, it was a rough patch, but it was what we had to do to make sure that BOA was here in 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and onward. There is no burnout on my part with regards to the world of esoterica and the paranormal. I'm still tremendously fascinated by this very mysterious world in which we live, and that's going to be borne out over the next few weeks and months as we continue onward here with the second half of Season 6. But I appreciate your support, Lawrence. I understand where you're coming from, and thank you for, having my back, if you will. So those are the emails from the listeners. Thanks once again to Lawrence, Andrea, and Stephen for writing in. For all those folks out there who'd like to be a part of future installments of BOA Audio listener feedback, you can write to boaaudio@hotmail.com or go to binnallofamerica.com, BINNALL of America.com, and click the contact button. And if you want something a little more interactive, you can join up at the official BOA forum, theUSofE.com, THEUSOFE.com. We call it BOA's Paranormal Playground. If you couldn't get the URL down just now, simply go to Binnall of America and click the forum button. I'm also on Twitter and Facebook, so feel free to befriend me, follow me, and poke me. I'd love to hear from you on those awesome sites as well. Up next, it is the thanks portion of the program, so allow me to tip my cap and thank the outstanding and esteemed BOA staff. Leslie, Chiron, Regan Lee, Joe V, Tina Senna, Rochelle Hawks, Richard Thomas, Marla Pena, Bruce Priddy, Tony Morrill, our contributing cartoonist Andy Carolyn, and our webmaster Jeremy Boston. Tons of new columns up at BOA, tons of new pieces in the works from the BOA staff. Tremendously detailed and quite in-depth from the awesome writers at Binnall of America. We say it all the time here at the end of the show, and it is the truth, my friends. If you're only listening to BOA Audio and you're not reading the columns at Binnall of America, then you're only getting half the story. BOA making it a part of your everyday search for esoteric news and opinion. Normally, this is the part of the program where I pass the bucket around to the BOA Audio listeners and ask you to make a donation to the franchise here and help us keep the whole operation up and running and freely available. But we're going to go in a different direction once again here at the end of the show, since I am a part of this exciting film project with Paul Kimball and Red Star Films, Beyond Best Evidence, the UFO Enigma. This is a very exciting project Paul and I have been working on, and it is going to be crowdsourced, which means we need donations from folks out there to make it happen. And you can find out more about it at indiegogo.com/UFO. That's spelled indiegogo.com/UFO. The gist of it is that we're going to be examining the various theories on what UFOs are with some of the brightest minds in the world of ufology. I know Stan Friedman's already on board, and a whole bunch of other big names are lining up to be a part of this film. But in order for us to make it happen, we need donations from folks out there to actually create this film. So go to indiegogo.com/UFO or go to banalofamerica.com and click the Beyond Best Evidence button. It's right there on the homepage, and that'll bring you to the website with more information. And with this special campaign, each level of donation comes with a whole bunch of different perks that you'll receive as the film is being made or after it is completed. So be sure to check out the various stages and tiers of donation levels and find out perhaps what you could get for a small donation and the cool stuff you get as the donations get larger and larger. Beyond Best Evidence, the UFO Enigma. This is your chance to help us make a UFO film that is not beholden to the cable networks and is more in keeping with the true spirit of Banal of America and our many, many friends and supporters. Next week on the program, we're going to be revisiting one of the more pernicious theories in the world of esoterica. I'm talking about the moon hoax theory. This was a guest that was suggested by one of the BOA audio listeners. He is Jarrah White. Man comes from Australia. He is a hardcore moon hoax enthusiast, and he's got tons and tons of videos up on YouTube. We got linkage to his stuff on BOA right now. And I know some of you out there are probably rolling your eyes saying, oh, Jesus, man, moon hoax, Banal, really? What is this all about? Well, let me tell you, folks, I went into it kind of with the same attitude. I'm not a big moon hoax fan myself, so I wanted to look at it from a completely different point of view, and that is, we've all heard the moon hoax argument. We've all heard the Van Allen belt thing and the whole thing about the flag moving and the lighting and all that stuff. So I went into this conversation with Jarrah White, who bills himself as the grandson of the moon hoax theory, with the intention of finding out more about moon hoax theory itself. Where did this come from? How has it evolved? If Jarrah White is the grandson of moon hoax theory, then who is the father and the grandfather of this field? And how do they all feel about the really lackluster standing that moon hoax theory has in the world of esoterica and in the mainstream? Altogether, you're going to hear a real fourth wall smashing edition of the program. We're not going to go over a whole bunch of ground that has already been covered in any other moon hoax discussion you've heard out there. I'm sure we touch on some of the theories that are prevalent in moon hoax research, but the big dog of this conversation is moon hoax research itself. What is this all about? How could it ever be resolved? Just a whole bunch of sort of real deep questions about the moon hoax theory. So I hope folks check that one out. Don't roll your eyes. Give it a chance. I think you're going to find it tremendously enlightening. That's next week on BOA Audio, Jarrah White talking about the moon hoax theory. And on that note, we close the book on another edition of BOA Audio Season 6. Big thanks once again to Tracy Twyman. Big thanks to Andrea, Stephen, and Lawrence for writing in for BOA Audio listener feedback. And, of course, super huge, monumentally appreciative thanks to the hardcore BOA Audio listeners, the ones who are tuning in right now, the folks who have had unending support of this program. You guys are awesome. I cannot thank you enough for what you do for this program. Thank you so much for making BOA Audio a part of your esoteric audio playlist. Until next time, this is Tim Banal, thanking you for listening and signing off.